Okay, so what I thought I'd try and do is create a Unit 3 review for everyone. So what I'm going to go through is kind of highlight each of the main points of the chapters that we covered for Unit 3, which, as you know, would be Chapter 8, Section 3 on intelligence, Chapter 9, Chapter 10, and Chapter 11. So I'm not going to go over every single detail throughout this chapter. I'm just going to kind of hit on key points that I feel are either a little bit tricky or some of the more difficult aspects of the units. And I felt like this would also, two birds, one stone, kind of be a test of this program that I plan to use. So first, we're going to start with Chapter 8, obviously, and go through kind of the key points of intelligence and like what I feel is more necessary to know for the exam. So give me a moment. It takes time to pull everything up on my computer. So as you can see, we'll start off with Chapter 8, like I just said. So what we'll do is go through this together, and then I will pull up a whiteboard to kind of hit on key points. So and then email me what you think, if you like this, if you don't like this, whichever. So let's start off. So give me one moment. Okay. So get this all copied. Oh, there we are. Oh, wrong one. It's a bit slow going, as you can see. Okay. So let's first go over Chapter 8. So with Chapter 8, the key thing to know is the idea of intelligence. So as we previously discussed in class, intelligence is all about the abilities that enable you to adapt in your environment and behave in a goal-directed way. So what exactly does that mean? Good question. So let's think about this. So when you measure intelligence and when you measure your ability to adapt to the environment, that would be like, say, for example, I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a moment. That be, for example, let's see if I can pull up the whiteboard. So how, let's see, type. So how do you behave in a goal-directed way? There's a couple ways you can. Let's see, you can behave in a goal-directed way by saying that you want to get a degree. Another way is, I think this is an example I used in class, but there are more negative ways that are still intelligent and goal-directed. So robbing a bank. Somebody robbing a bank would be behaving in a goal-directed way. They have certain goals in mind to adapt to their environment, such as like casing out the bank, things such as that. So just keep in mind when I say behaving in a goal-directed way and adapting to your environment, that does not mean good, only good ways. The definition of intelligence is neither negative or positive. Such a bad spell. It only, good way to phrase this, it only involves adaptation in goal direction. Okay. So we'll we'll keep this right there for a moment. So one other thing that is important to know is the idea of standardized testing. So standardized testing. That we also mentioned in class. That would be like the PSAT, the SAT, the ACT. And the reason why these are standardized is because they're a standard. So let's see, standard way questions, meaning that these questions are identical across to all people taking the exam or test. They're standardized. So everybody gets these same questions. Everybody is graded the same way. And that, as you recall, was very much popularized with the Stanford-Binet IQ test or intelligence test. So all people who took this received the same questions and were graded the same way. That was used to measure their IQ or intelligence quotient. So that's really all we needed to cover for the intelligence section of chapter 8. It's not really a lot, so just keep those things in mind. So, okay, let's move on to chapter 9. So with chapter 9, the key part, our first key part that we need to discuss is the idea of nature versus nurture. So as you recall, nature is the degree that biology plays in a person's development, while nurture is the degree that the environment plays into one's development. So let's think about that. Go over a couple ways that actually plays a role. So over here, I'm just going to write nature. So biology. Then over here, I'm just going to write nurture. So that'd be environment. Spelled incorrectly. It's fine. I fixed it. So get them a little bit even. So let's look at these. Let's kind of come up with a couple examples of how this plays into each. So in this box, we'll put everything having to do with nature. And then in this box, we'll have everything to put in nurture. Let's come up with an example of something we can examine. Let's think. Let's see. Let me think of a good example. Okay, let's use personality. That works really well, as we'll be discussing personality in the next few slides. So personality. So how does nature play a role in personality? Well, that'd be with one's genetics. Very much play a role. So their chromosomes. See here. See. So this is implying that there is a genetic component in personality. Okay. So that's all about biology. Let's think of another way that it could play a role in personality. We could look, or like, actually, let's think of it this way. So if we wanted to study nature's role in personality, one way we do this, so how would we study the role of nature in personality? So we want to look at how biology plays a role in personality. One key way we would look at this is studying twins. Think about it. Identical twins share the same genetic material. So genetically speaking, twins are, well, genetically speaking, they're the same. So if we wanted to study personality and the role of nature, we would study identical twins and how their personalities are similar or different. So that's just the key thing to keep in mind. Nature is all about biology. So one way that I've always remembered the difference between nature and nurture is by remembering that nature is naturally occurring. It involves our DNA, anything that almost you're not involved in. It just naturally occurs and it happens. So that's nature and personality. So what about nurture? So what about the environment? What about what we're exposed to in our roles? So let's come up with a couple of ways that nature plays a role, or nurture plays a role in our personality. Our friends, see, definitely. So who we surround ourselves with, our where we are raised. So like that could be like how strict parents are. Strict our parents are. Our school. So like what type of school you went to. So environment is going to be very different for people involved. So like when I think about environment, I always think family, friends, school, culture. So these key parts play a role. And so like so one way you could think like how would we study the role of nurture in personality? We could look at different cultures. So like so we could take someone, say, from North America and study them and see how their culture influenced their personality. And then we could take someone from, say, like Bosnia and Herzegovina and examine their personality. And then we'd compare the two to see the difference and how their culture influences their personality. So that's just a basic overview of nature versus nurture. So moving on from there, do my swish wish erase. Boom. I'm gonna share back the slides. All right. So let's go through. Takes a moment. There we are. So as y'all remember, we also discussed prenatal development. So prenatal development is all about the beginning. So before we even are out of the womb, how do we develop? So pre, before, natal, you know, you get it. So what we'll do is let's go through each of these. So we'll start first with our first stage, the germinal phase. Okay. So I'm going to create 3 boxes, one for each stage. I'm going to try and even them out as much as possible. Not that I need to. It'll just make me happier that way. There we are. So we got 3 stages. So let's kind of go through these together. So as you recall, our 3 stages were germinal, embryonic, and fetal. And one thing to keep in mind, it's really easy to remember the stages if and what occurs within each stage if you remember the names. And I'll explain exactly what I mean by that. So once I go through these. So let's first start with our germinal stage. So germinal starts at conception. It is when the fertilized egg is fertilized. So it's so basically at this stage it's the combination of sperm and egg to make a zygote, which is just a fertilized egg. So this stage also only lasts 2 weeks. So it's conception to 14 days. So we have a zygote. So one key thing that I did mention in class that is kind of part of this stage, and so key parts. So this stage is kind of summarized by cell division or division, you know, whichever, cell division. So cell division occurs during this stage. So that means that the zygote starts to replicate itself. So replication occurs, which after the 5th day, the zygote has become a blastocyst. So about the 9th day after conception, that blastocyst is going to implant itself within that uterine wall. So that's really all you need to know about the germinal stage. So just like I said, the key part of that germinal stage is cell division and cell replication. So from there, we move on to the embryonic stage. So within the embryonic stage, that lasts about the 3rd to 8th week. And then the key part of this stage is the formation and creation and formation of major organs. So as I mentioned in this stage as well, it's also the most precarious stage, meaning that the embryo, which it is now known as, the embryo is most at risk at this stage. So for our last and final stage, we have the fetal stage, which lasts from 9 weeks So 9th week to birth. So at this stage, the key part of this stage is continued growth and maturation. There we go. So also, one key thing that I should note as well is 24 weeks, the fetus reaches viability. So it can survive outside the womb at this stage. 24 weeks, do the math on that's about 6 months, give or take. So earlier, I mentioned that one way I've always found to make it easy to remember each of the stage and what's occurred is by using their names. I create cutesy little things to remember. So with the germinal stage, always apologies. It's the size of a germ. So it is so small, it's I joke, it's the size of a germ. It's just begun. So with the embryonic stage, that is when it's known as an embryo. And then the fetal stage, it's known as a fetus until birth, right? It's pretty straightforward. So that's kind of the basics of the prenatal stages of development. Nothing too crazy. So moving on from there, let's kind of go over the Piaget. Good old Piaget. So let me get this cleared, and then I will go back to my slides. So as we discussed in class when we talked about Piaget, he was a Swiss psychologist who actually used his own children, for the most part, to kind of conceptualize and create his stages of development. So one key thing to note is these are cognitive stages. So these are all about thought processes. Pressed a button. How children develop their thought processes through time. So that's something that you need to remember. And that actually might make it a little easier to kind of clarify and work through these stages. Because I know there's so many of them that's kind of hard to keep up with. So I wanted to kind of re-go over. I know we spent a decent amount of time on schemas, assimilation, and accommodation, but these I feel are slightly tricky, so I just want to kind of hit on these, and then we'll do a brief overview of each of the stages, the 4 stages of Piaget. So as we discussed before, schemas are mental ideas, concepts, or thoughts. And then you use those schemas to achieve, which is what you want, use these schemas to achieve mental equilibrium. So mental equilibrium, according to Piaget, is the idea that your schemas match your environment. So mental disequilibrium is the opposite of that. So it's when your schemas do not match your environment. So when you have mental disequilibrium, that is when you have to use either assimilation or accommodation to achieve mental equilibrium. So with assimilation, get that mouse out of the way. Assimilation, you take your schema that you already have and you kind of just use it within your environment. You apply it to the environment. An accommodation, you create or change or create a new schema. So I know I've done an example, but examples after examples I feel never hurt. So let's pull up this whiteboard and we'll go through an example. So we have what's known as a schema. let's say our schema is, I'll use the example in class, the horse schema. So the horse has, according to this child, our horse schema has 4 legs and big. Big. Yeah, we'll go with big. So our horse schema has 4 legs and is big. So our mental idea about horses. So wonder if I can change colors. Give me one moment. So I'm going to put the definitions in red for what I'm saying. So no concept idea about horses. So this is our schema. So we want to use this schema. So we use the schema to achieve mental equilibrium. So, or another way you can think of it, when our cognitions about, that's totally spelled right, about horses fit the environment. So, so we see a horse, and I'll keep the mental equilibrium example pretty straightforward. We see a horse at a barn. We call it a horse. Mental equilibrium has been achieved. We did it, guys. We did it, Reddit. So, our cognitions, our thoughts about these horses, our schema about these horses fit the environment. Meaning, we see a horse, we call it a horse. Pretty straightforward. Pretty straightforward, of course. So, what about mental disequilibrium? Well, we got to go through a couple of steps if we have mental disequilibrium. Let's work through an example of that. So, we see a cow. We call it a horse. That is incorrect. And our parents call us out and say, nope, that's not a horse, that's a cow. So that we call it we see a cow, we call it a horse, and our parents say, no, that's not a horse. So we have mental disequilibrium now. That is so badly spelled. I don't even think I could do it again. We're just gonna pretend like this never happened, guys. So there we go. So we have mental disequilibrium. So put our definitions right here. So when our cognitions about horses do not fit the environment. So we're kind of at a standstill here. So we want mental equilibrium because it feels nice. So we don't want disequilibrium. So we got to do one or of two things. So assimilation would still cause, that would be, so this, let me draw a line. Yeah, and then we'll try and make it look like an arrow. I did my best. I did my best. So this is assimilation, right? So we applied horse schema to cow schema. No mental equilibrium. No mental equilibrium meaning no, I put no ME. So we need to try something else. Well, how about we try accommodation? So we update our cows. So we update our horse schema. I'm going to keep it pretty simple. So we update our horse schema, but we also create a new schema, a cow schema, which means they're big, 4 legs, and have udders. This now is known as accommodation. We have created and also modified our schemas. Just a quick summary. We had a schema about horses. We tried to use it to achieve mental equilibrium by calling a cow horse. Mental equilibrium was not achieved. We had mental disequilibrium. So we had to create and modify 2 schemas. We had to create a cow schema and we had to update our horse schema. So these are used throughout Piaget's stages in very different ways, as you probably recall. So let's just go through each of these stages. Oh, there we are. So give it a sec, it'll come back in a moment. There we are. So you probably recognize that. That's the example we used. So we first have our sensor motor stage. And I'm just going to kind of go through these really quickly because they're pretty in depth. Actually, instead of just going through these, let's just hit on and I'm just going to write on this and just not save it. So the main characteristics of each stage, meaning these what is developed, what is used. With sensor motor, we got our reflexes, and we develop object permanence towards the end of that stage. Pre-operational, we now can use symbolic thinking. If you recall, symbolic thinking was like the example that I used where you pick up a stick and you use it to kind of play fight with, like it's a sword. The stick can symbolize something else, which object permanence is needed because before you have object permanence, if something wasn't in your line of sight, as you recall, it didn't exist. So centration and egocentrism are also issues during this stage. So let's go back for a moment. So let's hit on centration and egocentrism. Centration, so you focus on one feature or aspect of the object. So so an example of centration, I used this one in class, was the idea that with horses, you focus on one feature of the object, meaning their 4 legs, and you ignore the fact that cows don't look like horses at all because you're so focused. It's got 4 legs. It has to be a horse, of course. I'll try and stop making the horse, of course, joke. And then egocentrism is just this idea that everyone else thinks like you do. So that would be as simple as you see it one way as a child, so you work under the assumption that everybody else sees it your way. Okay. And then to our concrete operation stage, we develop conservation, we become more logical thinkers, and we become less focused on one feature. We kind of can see things as a whole. So decentration. And then finally, finishing up with our formal operation stage, we have what's known as abstract reasoning. So go through these real quick. Boop. So concrete operations, conservation abilities improve. So I'll show you an example of what I mean by conservation abilities. So this is actually used for young children to test their ability with conservation. So what they do is they put two glasses beside each other with the same amount of liquid. And as you can see, the child goes, those have the same amount. And then they actually take a bigger glass, like the one seen here, and put literally the exact same amount of liquid. But because they do not have conservation skills, they do not understand that that is still the same thing. As you recall, this is due to issues of there you go, the fact that if something's appearance changes, that means it's different now, according to children in this pre-operational stage. These are another couple ways. It's not just used with the water beakers. That's just a common way to test it. So as you can see, these are the same, but they space these lower ones out and they kind of push these upper ones closer together. So the child who hasn't developed their full conservation skills don't quite understand that. And then they take rods and they kind of like catty cornered them together. So it looks like they're not, so to the child, it looks like they are matched together. All right. So moving on from there, we'll go through Vygotsky's. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this one. This one's pretty straightforward. Just remember this idea of private speech, self-talk. QA, I remember it, is the idea that speech is private. It's for themselves. So it's private speech or self-talk. So they use it to walk themselves through difficult tasks. So let me see if I can get the video to play. Okay, I wonder if I have it as a slide. There we are. Let's see. You have to bear with me, guys. Let's see. Okay, well, video won't work. It will work if you pull up your PowerPoints. I apologize. I tried my best. So, and then, so private speech and just this idea of scaffolding. So, if you recall, let me pull up my whiteboard, my handy dandy whiteboard. So, if you recalled, I kind of drew and had you imagine the zone of proximal development as like a line. And then this is what the child, it's the gap between what a child can do and then what a child cannot do without help. And then we talked about like tying shoes. So the key thing to remember is that scaffolding is the tool. So like, so scaffolding is used to lessen, if you want to think of it this way, lessen the gap, the zone of proximal development. So we got, so if the child can complete part of the task, less help is needed. Less direction is needed. The example I used, if they can put their own shoes on, then you don't really need to kind of help them with that too much. But let's say they, so if the child cannot do part of the task, more help is needed. More direction is needed. So if they cannot tie the laces, then you wouldn't have to focus on helping them put their shoes on, but you would have to put most of your focus and direction in helping them tie the laces until the gap is gone. With that one task, when they can complete every step in tying their shoes by themselves. Pretty straightforward. All right. So that's kind of the zone of proximal development and just the 2 key points. The idea, or 3 key points, I apologize. The idea of the zone of proximal development itself, the idea of scaffolding, where, helping them complete the task, and then the idea of private talk. And that's how they help themselves through tasks. So, okay. It always takes a while. I'm sorry it takes so long to go back to screens. So for our last the last couple of things I wanted to cover for Chapter 9, development, won't take too terribly long because I want to focus most of the energy on Chapter 11 or Chapter 10 and 11 because I know unfortunately, I didn't get to spend as much time on that as I wanted to due to the circumstances you're very well aware about. So just remember the 3 levels. So the pre-conventional, conventional, and post-conventional levels. And the fact within these levels, there are 2 stages. So, a good way to go through these is by relating them to that example of Heinz dilemma we use. So just keep that in mind when you're studying these. Kind of relate it to the Heinz dilemma because I've found that helps the most. So finishing up, we'll discuss real quick parenting styles. So there we are. Let's go to our whiteboard. Get my line drawn. Woo. That is terrible. So, and I drew this in class, but it might help you to remember as well too. So, one moment. Trying to see if I can find a video I wanted to show you. Let's see here. I'm just gonna All right, so what I'm going to do, and I think this might actually help a decent amount, and also turn my volume down a bit, is I'm just going to go through these parenting styles, and then we'll just talk about them.
Well, I'm glad you're here. Some business came up I gotta handle. So we're gonna have to put our trip on hold. You understand? Yeah, yeah, that's cool. That's cool. Just for a couple of weeks. I understand. Yeah. Maybe a little longer. Yeah, whatever. Look, I'll call you next week and we'll find out the details. Okay? Yeah. It was great seeing you, son. You too, Lou. Yeah. I'm sorry, Will. You know what? Actually, this works out better for me. You know, the Slimmies of summer come to class wearing next to nothing. You know what I'm saying? Well, it's all right to be angry. Hey, why should I be mad? I'm saying at least he said goodbye this time. I just wish I hadn't wasted my money buying a stupid present.
All right. So we're not going to watch like every bit of the video. So with this, his father seems to kind of let him do whatever he wants, and he doesn't seem to be around a lot as well. So let's pull up our PowerPoint. So children make their own decisions, even though they're not capable, may not be capable of doing so. Okay, well, definitely would say, so it's definitely permissive. But permissive indulgent or permissive neglectful? Well, let's reason through this together. Permissive indulgent would be that they give them whatever they want, just in summation. So it's probably not that, so it would be permissive neglectful. So not around a lot. So pull this up. So and you can pull that up as well. So if you open the PowerPoint, you'll just pull that up. So it's low on warmth and low on control. So going to our whiteboard, we first have our permissive neglectful. Low on warmth, low on control. All right. Hopefully this saves, but if it doesn't, it's K. Okay, let's go back to our next video, our next clip. Right, I meant to clip this, but it. Okay, what about this one?
Well, my mother, she's in charge of every single day of her life. Hi, Robin, jolly Robin, and thou shalt know my Jay, and thou shalt know of mine. Enunciate, you must be understood from anywhere in the room, or it's all no. I heard that. From the top, a princess must be knowledgeable about her kingdom. The Daphne Doodle. That's a C. A princess does not be short. At least not for dog. Early is compassion, patient, cautious, clean, and above all, a princess strives for, well, perfection.
All right. So let's go back to our PowerPoints. So the mother seems to be very demanding, doesn't seem to show a lot of warmth. One key thing in the clip that she said was, she controls every day of my life. Princess must strive to perfection. So to me, that would be authoritarian, right? Let's think about it. So authoritarian, as you recall, is authoritarian. We're gonna just click is low on warmth, so not very I don't want to say caring, that's not the right word. Not very it's a good word to use. Affectionate. There we go. I don't know why, but there we are. Not very affectionate and high on control. So, meaning that they have high expectations. Gosh. So here's what we're going to do. We're just going to move this right there. All right. So that's that one. So let's go to the next one.
Wow, your house is really nice. I know, right? I'm home. Hey, honey. Hey. Hey, hi, my best girlfriend. Hey, Mrs. George. This is Katie. Hello, sweetheart. Hi, welcome to our home. Just want you to know, if you need anything, don't be shy, okay? There are no rules in this house. I'm not like a regular mom. I'm a cool mom. Right, Regina? Please stop talking. I'm gonna make you girls a hump day treat. This is your room? It was my parents' room. But I made them treat me. So guys, happy hour is from 4 to 6. Is there alcohol in this? Oh God, honey, no. What kind of mother do you think I am? Why, do you want a little bit? Because if you're gonna drink it, what else do you do in the house? No, thank you. So, you guys, what is the 411? What has everybody been up to? What is the hot gossip? Tell me. What are you guys listening?
Anyways, so let's go back to our whiteboard. So with Regina's mother, she seems to be very indulgent. Let's see. Go back to the whiteboard. So actually, let's go back to our PowerPoint. I won't spend a lot of time on this one, as I use this example in class. So there we go. The Regina's mom seems to kind of let her do whatever she wants. You know, she lets her have whatever she wants, like their bedroom. And she seems to be very indulgent because she's not a regular mom. She's a cool mom. So and then the last one, which unfortunately I don't have an example of. Authoritative was the one. It's high control with high warmth. So there are expectations and demands that the child must meet, but they are reasonable and they're not hard to meet. as well. So, moving on to chapter 10. So, let's see. All right. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on these first parts. I'm going to mostly focus on the last chapter and the last parts of chapter 10. So, as you recall, the study of psychology of how we behave in social settings is social psychology. So, specifically, they would study how we develop our attitudes, so our beliefs about things, and how, say, peer pressure works or social influence. So, one thing they study is the idea of cognitive consistency, and that's where the idea of the cognitive dissonance theory came about. So, cognitive consistency, let me get to my whiteboard. Cognitive consistency is when your behaviors equal your attitudes. So, if you, for example, like someone, you spend time with them. That is cognitive consistency. Your attitude, the fact you like them, matches your behavior, the fact you spend time with them. So there we go. So your behavior, you spend time with them, and your attitudes align. So there are going to be times where your behaviors do not match your attitudes. So, you do not like someone, but you choose to spend time with them. So, your behavior, the fact you're spending time with them, does not match your attitudes, that you don't like someone. So, that's where the idea, that would be known as cognitive dissonance. So I'm going to put that in red right here. So if you recall, and this is the example that I used in class with the smoking and the health, according to cognitive dissonance theory, there are 3 things that you can do to achieve consonance, where your attitudes and behaviors align. You can change your behavior, you can change your attitude, or you can create new attitudes. So let's use the example. You hang out with somebody, but you don't like them. So you change your behavior, you quit hanging out with them. You change your attitude, you decide maybe you do like them, or you remove the inconsistency and create new beliefs or attitudes. You're okay with them. You're like not the biggest fan, but they're not too bad. And these 3 methods are then used to reduce that dissonance you feel. So, let's see. Let's hit on the attribution process. So, keep in mind that you attribute behavior to 2 types of causes. You either make trait or situational attributions. So, you assign the cause of their behavior to traits or characteristics. Or you assign the cause of behavior to a situation or environment. So just a quick one, you see someone yelling at someone. Trait attribution would be the fact they're a meanie beanie, the fact that they're not a nice person, the fact that they're mean, they're unfriendly. Those are trait attributions. Their characteristics about them. Situational attribution may be that person that they're yelling at was mean to them, or maybe that person that they're yelling at is an employee of theirs, or maybe they're telling them a story, they're not actually yelling at them. So you're applying the cause of the behavior, meaning why that person is acting that way, to the situation or environment they're in. You're not saying that they're always like that. You're saying situationally, right now, this is why they're behaving that way. The fact that we're lazy, cognitively speaking, causes us to make these biases. So I know we focused on this a decent amount, so I'm not going to spend a terrible amount of time on these. So fundamental attribution error, or FAE, that's when you just make more trait attributions than situational attributions. Actor observer bias, that's when you make FAEs about others, but not about yourself. And then finally, the self-serving bias, where you make trait attributions for when things go your way, situational attributions when they don't, when you fail. So we actually did a pretty good job of covering this. Oh, yes. Let me go over aggression. I know I didn't go over it as well as I wanted to. So I'm actually just going to focus on this because this is the key part that I want you to know. So I'm going to put that in bold and underline it. So aggression is just when you intentionally choose to harm another person that does not want to be harmed. That's pretty straightforward. So aggression can be physical, it can be verbal, it can be emotional, many ways. So, but within aggression, there are two types. And the reason, and these two types are very important. So instrumental aggression is just aggression for achieving a goal, while hostile aggression is just you're motivated just to injure, hurt others, emotionally, physically, or otherwise. So, instrumental aggression, an example of that would be like you honking your horn and yelling at somebody to get out of your way. You're intending to cause harm, you're intending to shock them, to move them. So another way you can think about instrumental aggression is the idea that you would not be performing this aggression unless you're trying to achieve a goal. Hostile aggression would just be like you walk up to someone and punch them in the face. The only reason you punch them in the face is because you just really, 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 really wanted to punch them in the face. So like I said, that's kind of all you really need to know about aggression. And the reason why I had y'all do that aggression activity, and like I said, didn't get us a lot of time to spend on it, unfortunately, is just to kind of figure out like, okay, well, I think this is aggression, but do I feel that instrumental aggression is less aggressive than hostile aggression? And most people actually do feel that a lot of instrumental aggression, if you know the goal behind it, isn't actually aggression. But that is something we'll actually talk about in chapter 13, or watch a video about. We'll see. So let's go on to chapter 11. So I know for tomorrow you'll be reviewing chapter 11 and going through it by yourselves. So I'm not gonna like give you super into detail stuff. I'm just gonna kind of hit on a couple of things that I really, really, really want you to know that I feel are a little bit more difficult to understand. And over spring break, I'll actually make a full, well, actually, I have everything that I was gonna really hit on. So you'll have this actually to use to as part of your chapter 11 study. So let's go through it real quick. So one thing that you need to know about personality, let's go to my whiteboard. Okay. One moment. So what exactly is personality then? So what is personality? So keeping with my theme, I'll just put definitions in red. I feel like that works the best. So personality it's a key aspect of someone's identity. That's one part. It is their collection, so usually unique collection of attitudes, emotions, thoughts, habits, impulses, and there we are, and behaviors. So, or behaviors. So let me fix that real quick. There we go. So that key part is why we being psychologists, study personality, because your personality influences your behaviors. If you are a very extroverted person, meaning that you are sociable and you feel more comfortable going out, that's going to influence your behavior to go out more, to hang out with more people. While conversely, if you are an introvert, that is going to make you more likely to stay in and read a good book instead of going out to parties. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to hit on a couple of key theories of personality. I'm not going to focus on all of them. Like I said, I'm just going to focus on the ones that seem a bit more convoluted, or in Freud's case, different. So let's go through these. So we'll, of course, start out with Freud. There we are. So Freud felt like there's three key components of personality. So we'll go over the levels of awareness, but for your study guide, when I mention, I will literally read it out to you so you can make sure you understand the three